here at AWF, we love talking, and between us, we all have a lot of opinions, anecdotes, and wisdom. So whether it's about world issues or matters of the heart, we don't leave any stone unturned. And we wanted to let our wonderful community, who we love, in on our candid conversations, which is why we decided to start Getting Real with AWF, where you can take a sneak peek into those discussions. And today we're going to be talking about dating outside your race, religion, and culture. So more and more we're seeing these types of couples, and I found a few stats for you here. These are a little bit old, but in the US, interracial relationships have gone from 310,000 in 1970 to 2.3 million in 2008, and that's a few years ago, so we can only assume it's gone up. And interracial couples account for 7% of relationships in England and Wales, and that was in 2018, so that's a fresher stat for you. So it's clear that these are on the rise, but have attitudes really changed? And especially within the South Asian community, are we still actually stuck in the dark ages when it comes to this? That's what we want to talk about today. So we have a great panel for you today. You've got me, Alina, and Maliha from the AWF team. And we're also joined by lovely Jonah today, who's wearing a very stylish hat. And he is the founder of the Blindian Project. And the Blindian Project aims to dismantle anti-Blackness in communities. But I'll let you guys do a better intro of yourselves. And I've been talking for a while as well. So Jonah, do you want to start with a little intro about yourself?
Sure. So the Blindian Project is a art-based, globally crowdsourced documentary project. It seeks to normalize Black and South Asian relationships, and as you said, dismantle anti-Blackness within both of our communities, because it is present in both of our communities. So as we seek to normalize these relationships, obviously we are talking about things like colorism, classism, and all of that good stuff. So the Blindian Project's community for people who, well, I'm sure everyone's probably aware, but being in one of our relationships can be quite a polarizing experience. People oftentimes don't have anyone to really speak to about it. So the community provides support. It provides success stories. It provides hope. It provides all of that for people who may have no other place to go.
Amazing. And we love the Blindian Project at AWF, so we're really happy to have you here.
Oh, cool. Glad if you've seen some of the stories and things like that. That's cool.
Yeah, we've shared some of the stories actually. So I'm Alina, I'm the social media manager of AWF. Okay. And we've shared a lot of the stories from your platform, Blindian Project, on our channel as well. And you can just see how much people need to hear that message of hope. Those pieces of content actually end up being some of the top performing pieces, and not only in terms of engagement, but the comments that we get, and also people sharing it with their friends. It's such an important project that you're doing. And so we're really excited to have you here.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'm glad to be here. I think I said this last time as well too, but I'm really glad and honored to be sharing this space with you ladies. I don't feel like this would have happened months ago or last year. So just feel privileged to be having these conversations and just pushing both of our cultures forward, really.
Yep. Yeah, it's great. Maliha, do you want to do a little intro?
Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad to be here in this conversation. And Jonah, I've been stalking your Blindian Project Instagram account for the longest time. You probably know I'm a serial commenter, but it's so important that we amplify specifically relationships that fall out of the realm of Black and white relationships, because those are the ones that are usually more visible. But I'm Maliha, or Mal, whichever one you prefer, and I'm the assistant coordinator for Asian Women Festival.
Amazing. So let's start off. What are your guys' experience with interracial, interfaith, intercultural relationships? And I guess, Jonah, secondary question on that as well. Why did you decide to start the Blindian Project and focus on especially South Asian and Black relationships? Why did you start that?
Yeah, sure. So I met my wife 2001. We later got married 2007. I had never been with a South Asian or Indian woman before. Probably only had met probably a handful, less than five kind of South Asian people in my life. I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in and around Chicago. My family's from Uganda. So it was quite a shock for me. I've always been into culture. I love culture. That could be, for me, street board culture. It could be hip hop culture. It could be, there are all of these different type of cultures. And I've just always loved learning new things and different ways to live and learn and things like that. And so, yeah, so it took a while for us to get married, which was fine. Took me a while to get introduced to the parents. Where I was coming from in the States, I mean, the culture there, dating culture, I mean, you're dating from 11, kind of 12, 13. Parents could be meeting some of your boyfriends and girlfriends. They're never once really asking, is this the person that you're going to get married to? It's almost just a normal part of everyday life and growing up and experiencing and figuring out who you are as a person. So it took a while for me and my wife, for me to get introduced to my in-laws. From the stories that I've heard talking to other people, I had it somewhat easy. And once we were married in 2007, I didn't meet another couple that resembled us or had the same experience of us until about 10 years later. So aunties would tell us at the wedding, oh, I know of another Black and Telugu couple. They got married here. I never really seeked them out or anything like that. On a trip to India, street mobs were beating up African students. This was 2017. There was a flare up for some reason, and street mobs basically were beating up people in Noida and things like that. So when I came back, I put out a call just trying to find other people who shared the same experiences, and had 10 stories that came in from across the world. And that was the beginning of the Blindian Project. It was really to find other people who shared a similar experience, and just trying to connect with people, really. Just wanted to speak to people, connect with people. I never really had a vision for where it is today, if that makes sense. I think as you do these things, everything's kind of a learning curve, and you figure out, oh, I could do this. Or, for example, it's called the Blindian Project, but it's not specific to just Black and Indian. It's actually, you may see a Black and Pakistani, or a Black and Fiji, or a Black and a different type of culture like that. So it's widened, and that's how the project initially started.
It's amazing. And also, we know, Alina and Maliha, that you guys have also, you've dated outside of like your race and religion. And Jonah, you alluded to it a little bit there about like family reception, especially from the South Asian side of that relationship. What are your guys' experiences, and what's the sort of family reaction been to those relationships?
Yeah, I can start that off. I think, Jonah, you touched upon, like, within our culture, brown Desi culture, there isn't much discussion on dating. It's not it's a taboo topic anyway. So for you to go ahead and then date someone that's beyond your culture and religion and race adds to another layer, and that is so challenging for so many of us. I've never experienced actually getting to the point where I've had to, get married to someone or introduce them to my parents. But my experiences have only been dating outside the race, and I'm born and bred in London, and I feel like that's so normal to me. I don't need to actively seek out someone that's Pakistani and Muslim. It's, for me, it's end of the day, it's like my morals and values and whether I connect and have chemistry with someone. So I think my dating preferences have always been wide and open to whoever, and it makes for such an interesting experience. And I think it's sad how it's an exception and not the norm right now.
Can I ask you a question?
Oh.
So do your parents ask you if you're dating?
So they wouldn't say, so I think my mum and I have a pretty open relationship where I have told her about past boyfriends. Okay. Yeah, but not, I think a lot of brown girls can relate, not with your dad, it's more with your mum. And also,
Okay.
my mum is also pretty open about whoever I want to date, which is really, I'm really lucky and blessed to have that. And I think it's important to have those open discussions from the start about dating and what kind of people you like. So, you know, so you can bring your parents on that journey with you. Yeah.
And I know, Alina, you've got a really supportive mum as well, and like she supports like who you date and stuff like that. So like, number one, speak a little bit about that, but also like, what has the reception been from maybe outsiders, so like friends as well? I know that can be a big problem within the Asian community, especially I find myself, maybe Asian men have a problem with it, especially for women dating outside of their race. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Mal said. You know, I've only dated outside of my race and predominantly outside of my religion as well. And it's never been a problem in terms of my own parents. They're all about like just finding a good person that's gonna, you know, be what I want them to be in terms of my own standards or whatever I'm looking for. It's just about good values, right, at the end of the day. But I've had conversations with friends sometimes that they're like, oh, this isn't gonna work out. He's not brown, he's not Pakistani, or he's not even Desi. This is just, you know, like this, you're just having fun. And it's like, no, there could be something here. Just because he's not what you expect me to, who you expect me to be with, doesn't mean that it can't go anywhere. I think the big thing that we face is not always the pressure of our parents, but the pressure that their community places on them that then trickles down. I've been really fortunate that my parents don't kind of get lost in that pressure, but I've had aunties look at me if I bring even just a friend who is the opposite sex, and they just assume that that is my boyfriend. And it's like, why is he white? Why is he not wearing a kurta? Like, you know, there's so many questions that they have, and you can feel them staring at you. You know, they might not be, but you can just feel that they're talking about you in their head. So I love your point about Mal about, you know, it should be normal, and it's not. And all these interracial relationships in our community are outliers. And it's really sad when you have to have these difficult conversations, but at the end of the day, you're just talking about a good person that you want to spend your life with, right? There's nothing taboo about that.
And what do you think are the biggest issues within the South Asian community towards interracial relationships, and what do you think we need to do better in? What are the issues out there? Like, why is this still such a problem?
I think people, so coming back to Alina's point on friends and their opinions, so people and aunties' opinions are usually projections of their own internal biases, and you have to usually step away from that and be like, why do you have a reaction towards my relationship? And it's always down to, you know, if we're talking specifically about Black and South Asian relationship, it comes down to anti-Black sentiments that exist deeply in our culture. And I think that's like the number one problem that we need to really dismantle. Also, I know like my parents are immigrants, so there's a fear of losing your culture, losing your sense of identity. They've already moved to the UK, that's already traumatizing for them. And then to see like, oh, maybe a child that might step away from that breaks their identity down even further. So there's this fear of losing yourself. I feel like our parents have fear of losing your culture, which they hold so dearly, and also anti-Black sentiments.
I was going to say, it's really interesting for us to see the perspective of you coming in to an Indian family, like the one you did. What was the reaction? What was your experience with that?
Yeah, so like I said before, so 11, 12, 13, 14, I mean, where I grew up, we're dating in the States. Obviously, it's nothing serious. You're just trying to figure out who you are, and you like a girl, and the girl likes you, and you're trying to figure things out. Now, with my in-laws, obviously, I was like 21, 22 when I met my wife. So it took a while to actually meet them. So that was challenging for myself more than anything. I mean, coming from the States, a place that I feel like racism exists there. There are a lot of stereotypes against Black people, against Black males. It kind of brought me back to thinking about those feelings from that point in time. So I think it's very easy to be asking yourself, am I good enough? Why can't I meet these people? But it's not until you actually understand the culture and know that even for other people, even for a brown person, they may not be taking them directly to the parents. So yeah, so that was one of the main challenges for me, really. Answer your question. Sorry, did I answer your full question that you were just asking?
Yeah, you did. I was just asking about like what challenges you faced, and I guess the biggest challenge.
So that was the main challenge for me, and it was almost an internal challenge to myself to remember that there is nothing wrong with me. Don't take it personal. It's actually to do with them and timing. And look, to be honest, sometimes within that relationship, so with me and my wife, we need to be ready as well too, right? So it doesn't make sense to say, let me go meet your parents when you guys are still trying to figure out if you want to get married. Because a lot of times people may not have that in their head, like you're not taking everybody back to the parents. You want to take the person who is the person that you want to marry. So it takes time as a couple until you both feel comfortable that yes, marriage is something that we want to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so other than that, there was no issues really with other family. I mean, I met some of the aunties and uncles who did this screening, whatnot, and I have no issues with that. Obviously, I understand why it's done. Still really, really close friends with those aunties and uncles today. And no, it was, like I said, my experience has been very tame in comparison to a lot of other people who have been threatened with, you know, being thrown out of the house or cut off or whatever the situations may be.
I'm so glad that you had like a positive experience, but I am actually quite shocked because a lot of the experiences that I have heard of or like seen around me, it's not been a good one, and it's especially when it's been Black people.
Yeah.
I know, I think there's like, I don't know what this is, but it seems like if there's a white person introduced to the family, it's different than if a Black person is introduced to the family. I don't know, have any of you guys had
100%.
similar experience?
Sorry, let me just say one. Yeah, let me just say one thing. So my mother-in-law, the family's Telugu. Mother-in-law's Brahmin. My father-in-law's not Brahmin, so they had to elope themselves to go get married. So, and she was like an outcast for probably a couple of months' time, maybe a year's time. So that was already in their story, right? So it wasn't like everyone has followed the story that they need to follow. Everyone's had arranged marriages, and all of a sudden now comes me. They actually lived that story themselves as well too. So it was probably a bit more palatable from that standpoint. But I fully take your point that it's quite different when you're saying, yes, Mom, I'm bringing a Black man home or a Black woman home.
What do you guys think? Have you heard of stories where that's been like a big issue?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think, you know, I've seen it even if I'm bringing home, not personally me, but like my friend, if she's bringing home a different type of South Asian, whether, because she's Pakistani, bringing home an Indian Hindu, like, oh my God, like, what are you thinking? So I think depending on the household, yes, I think there are those internal biases towards different cultures, towards different religions. So almost bringing home a white man in America is less of a threat because it's the culture and what we're used to here. And it's almost the expectation of being westernized. But bringing home an Indian that might not be their same religion is more of a threat because that's just unheard of. But luckily, again, I can't speak from experience of having kind of that similar situation. I've had it the flip way where I was outcasted because I wasn't Iranian. And, you know, where my parents are from wasn't deemed honorable to be matched with someone from Iran. And so it was a really difficult conversation to have. But, you know, Jonah, to your point, like he wasn't ready, and he wasn't ready to have that conversation with his parents. So we just had to just end it, even though he had met my parents, they loved him, but he personally wasn't mature or ready emotionally, mentally. So we just called it quits, and I'm so glad we did. But yeah, I mean, I know people who've tried to bring home a Black person or a person of different religion, and it's been harder for them than it has been if they were just white. So they've almost settled and dated a white person, and didn't really fight that battle. I mean, they're happily married now, they have beautiful kids, but it was a safer option, I think, for her when she was deciding who to bring home.
Yeah, it's interesting you say safer option, because I think that's our community the themes are all about honor and shame. So the fear of abandonment, the fear of being excluded, is, you know, it's scary and it's psychologically unsafe for us. So a lot of us tend to appease our parents. So we tend to compromise and settle for something that we don't actually want, in order to remain in that familial, safe environment. And again, like for us to step out is threatening for our parents, because like, hang on, what are you doing here? You're breaking years and years of traditions. And I think, so like you, Jenna, you touched upon like casteism. So it exists within our own Asian community. We will have that long screening process. We'll find something to complain about. And this is something that's we need to tackle on hand. And it's not just a, you know, Black and South Asian issue per se. It's actually an issue that's so deep rooted in our community. And I don't know how it's begun. It's crazy. And we have to actively challenge that. And I think that's staying true to who you want to be with and who you love, and staying true to what your morals and values are. Because if we don't start doing that and having those conversations, then these century-old traditions aren't ever going to change.
Yeah, I think it's comfortable being uncomfortable and having those uncomfortable conversations. And I think a lot of the things that I hear sometimes is like, you can't talk to me like that, I'm older. And I think, you know, it's that older generation, and you need to do it nicely probably, you know, but it's like having these conversations and helping them educate on like, this is okay, this is normal, this isn't me being rude or me not loving my culture or my religion. This is about loving myself and finding someone who loves me for me. And I think it's so beautiful. I say this all the time, and I wrote that soon to be mother-in-law, who wasn't a mother-in-law, a whole letter in Farsi, in her language, explaining to her how instead of talking about our differences, we need to celebrate them, because they're bringing two beautiful families together. I'm learning about the Iranian culture, he's learning about the Pakistani culture. I don't even think she read my letter. But I think it's about having those uncomfortable conversations, being a little bit vulnerable for hopefully a better outcome. If it's not helping someone, it's helping someone else. And I think that's the beautiful thing about even the stories that you share, Jonah, on the Blindian Project. I don't think, you know, everyone is facing that, but they know someone somewhere that story could help them. And so we see a lot of people sharing those stories all the time.
Right. The only thing I was going to quickly say is, so my father came from a place called Jinja, which is in the capital of Uganda. It's by the Nile River. He grew up like, and maybe some of your parents could tell similar stories, but you know, you've heard the stories of, oh, I had to study by candlelight, and oh, I had to walk miles to school. So this is his story. Now he made it to the States. He was a cardiologist in the States. He had his own practice, so he did well for himself. So because he did that, he himself thought, you know what, if I can do that, every person can do that. And all Black people can do that. And he was a proud Republican, and he supported the Republicans. And I remember whenever we go to these parties and stuff, he'd be like one of the lone people having these conversations. And he was proud about it. He's like, everyone can do this. You can do it. And later on in life, like, I would challenge him about whoever the president may be. The Republican, it could be Bush. I could have challenged him about people going to war. Why are they going to war? What do they actually really want? And I think he grew to see that as a step of maturity in myself, that I'm becoming more knowledgeable. I'm challenging him now in this view of, look, I've done well sorry, I'm talking from my father's point of view. I've done well for myself. I want my son to be better than I am. I don't feel that with, the South Asian community. I don't feel that people are respecting people when you challenge them about their beliefs or about their relationships. I usually hear about this great block of fear that people are feeling when they go to speak to their parents. So, and that's one of the biggest questions that that we always kind of face or tackle. It's like, well, how do I introduce my partner to my parents? How can I go about this? I'm so scared. I'm so fearful. And the strange thing is some of the time, some of the times the parents have no issues when they actually introduce. A lot of the times after they've been introduced, it's that partner who almost becomes closer to the parents than the actual child is.
So how would you say, what advice do you give to those people if someone now is saying, look, which I know many people are, I know I've seen a lot of like patterns within the South Asian community of dating any race, any religion, anything, and then when it comes to like marriage time, maybe even dumping like love of their life just to find a partner who is of that faith, rather than having that conversation with their parents. So how would you say, how do you approach those discussions with your parents if you're in that position and wanting to marry someone outside your faith or religion or race?
From my experience, for a really long time, and I think to some point, it's still important for my mom that I marry someone Muslim. I think that is something, because she's very strong in her faith. And I brought home a Hindu, a Christian. I've done it all basically. But my always, what I tell her is, just because if I bring home someone who is Muslim, won't make them a good person. I'm out there looking for a good person, and that automatically doesn't come if they're Pakistani or Muslim. So, and slowly she's gotten that. And so when I do bring home a person, she looks at them as who they are and not by their labels, because they could be anything and even better than I am as a Muslim. So that's how I always explain it to my mom, is like, I'm looking for a good person with good values. That comes in all different races, that comes in all different religions. And so for me, these are the 3 things I'm looking for. They meet them, would love for you to meet them, get to them as a person, because you just can't take it from face value that this person is Pakistani, this person is Muslim, they're going to be great. I hear horror stories from people who've married someone that their mom or dad knew of, and it's turned out to be actually awful. So I don't really take face value in just arranged marriages or arranged introductions. And so to me, it's just a good person. And that, again, comes in different races.
And it's really weird. There's like stereotypes within our community that love marriages don't ever work out.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really make sense to me. And I think, so back to your question, Kim, it's a series of conversations. You can't expect to knock on your parents' door and be like, hey, I'm doing this thing. And they'll be like, okay, fine. It's and you have to be so patient. You're changing you're trying to challenge their internal biases that they've had, and they've grown up in a certain way, and you're growing up in another certain way. And it's just understanding where, I think, being as nice to them as possible, but also staying truthful to who you are, and know that, you might not get the outcome that you want to, and you might actually have to compartmentalize your life and step away from certain situations in order for you to live how you want to live. Because I think it's important to remember you're not doing anything wrong. You're challenging social constructs that exist to oppress and demean people, and you're actually challenging that, which hats off to you. But you need a lot of strength and compassion for yourself, a lot of self-care, and hopefully a supportive relationship where you both can tackle that together. But just being a realistic, optimistic person, knowing that there will be some challenges and barriers that I have to overcome. Yeah.
Jonah, do you have any advice for approaching those conversations?
Yeah, and I'll share it with you. I actually But you know, people. Sorry, when the whole George Floyd situation started, like you started seeing a lot of these. They were almost like PowerPoint slide decks, but they're IG, so they're like panels. So they're like 6, 7 panels. How to do this? How to do this? How this? It's almost like you're writing a blog post. And I had never seen one about specific to Blindian couples about how to introduce your partner to your parents. So one day I just started documenting what I went through and things that I knew from my experiences or talking to people. And a lot of it goes back to the communication. It goes back to, like I'm saying, challenging your parents' thoughts. So what I know from speaking to people who tell me their stories from a very young age, South Asian women or people in general are, and I'll use the word programming because you're told that black, I will say black is bad. Don't go out in the sun, you may get too black. Don't, black people are lazy. Why don't they just do this? Why don't they just pull their straps up and just get stuck in? So it's like from a young age, it feels like people are being told the color black or this whole relation to the color black is not positive. So I think it's about challenging that. And I mean, let's not get into arguments or I don't think getting into arguments is a way to do it. You want to show to your parents, to that adult, that you are mature, you're composed, you are passionate in some cases, if you may be passionate about it, that I don't believe with this. I don't believe what you're saying. Why do you think this way? Just having a conversation. I think it's those little conversations that start to chip away. So it's not just you've woken up one day and it's, hey, mom or dad, I'm bringing home a black woman or a black male. I mean, they get it. You've broken it down. You've talked about it. They may have think that black people are lazy or they don't want to get stuck in or things like that, or they don't value education or things like that. And I think if you have those conversations and you start chipping away and getting to that point, then it's much easier to be able to bring up a conversation about I've found this person, or I've met this person and I'm very, very serious about them. And I want you to meet them.
Yeah, definitely. I like the way you say it's basically, it shouldn't be like right up until the point where you're about to introduce them. This issue goes wider than that. It's like,
yes,
if you have these prejudices in your home, you should be challenging them before it's like a situation where you have to challenge them.
Yeah.
So I think that is like a really important point that you brought up there. What do we do about these things where it's people aren't listening? And in my experience, like I think parents is an issue that some people have. Another thing that other people have is like people around them who aren't necessarily there for their care, but will say stuff anyway. So like, for example, I'm with a guy who's like Christian. He's not like, I'm a Sikh woman. Lots of people would say, he won't have this values or he won't have that value. But I know for a fact he has better Sikh values than lots of Sikh guys I know, for example, who just say they are a certain identity but don't actually embrace those qualities. So what do you say about those people who don't necessarily have your best interest at heart but still like to make their opinions heard on the situation?
Bye.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
Right?
I was thinking
like why are they
exactly.
part of your life, or why are I think as humans, naturally things are going to affect us in a negative way, but I think you have to feel strong about your relationship and trust the other person. A big part of this is just trust. But if someone's being negative and they don't have my back, I don't want them in my life. So I would just say bye. Yeah. I know that's easier said than done, obviously, especially when it's family members. But I feel that, in situations where I got negative commentary about like, oh, this is just a phase. He's not Pakistani, so you're not marrying him. You're just having fun. I could feel myself stepping away from that relationship, and I lost people along the way. And that's okay, I think, because I wouldn't want that negative energy anyways, whether that's about this relationship or about any other element of my life.
It's about boundary setting, isn't it? You shouldn't allow anyone to talk about your relationship in a certain manner, as with anything else in your life. And it's an act of self-love for yourself and your partner and your relationship, and just the life that you want to live and the morals you want to stand up for you to be like, leave my life, block them, you know?
Yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, you can't continue like that. I think me and my partner did is I was going through a time where I was really anxious. I was like, oh my God, you know, I don't know what will happen in the future. You know, I'm sorry, you're going to probably get discriminated a lot. I don't think I can handle that. I'm really sorry. And he said, you know what, let's just talk to each other about it. I'll be a safe space. Any anxiety, any concerns you have, let's discuss it between ourselves. And it really worked, because at the end of the day, it's about you two. And if you can deal with it, and if you can talk to each other about it, then, you know, then no one else can have a say. Yeah.
I think it is really important, especially in this culture, which is very community based, where maybe people's opinions who aren't necessarily closely related to you feel that they do have a say. I think that's what a lot of people struggle with when it comes to, you know, stepping outside of the norm, for example, in any aspect, not just dating. So what do you think from this conversation, what steps can we take to go forward, or anyone listening to this, to sort of dismantle this taboo, essentially?
I think first check yourself. Do you have any racial like preferences that are, I mean, do you have any dating preferences that are inherently racist? And I think everyone that's probably listening in, take a few moments to think, yeah, do I mean, do I want to date a specific person to appease my parents? Is that actually challenging the oppressive culture that we exist in? So firstly that. Secondly, you got to know yourself, and you just got to like love who you want to love, because at the end of the day, our culture is very, you know, it has its beauty, but it also has a lot of its negative sides, and people will talk regardless of who you bring home, of what you do, what you look like. And, you know, life is too short for you to just be with someone just to appease your parents. This sounds really horrible, but family leave, family pass away. At the end of the day, you'll be left with your life choices.
Jonah, what do you think we should take away from the discussion?
I definitely feel that there's a process to it. It's not a you wake up one day and talk to your parents and it's going to happen. It's a process. It's about being strong as well too. It's about being uncomfortable. It's just about fighting for what you actually believe in. And I spend a lot of time on social. I'm on the web. I'm on the net a lot. I see a great push from South Asian women, from women in general. Let me just say women in general, right? Even Black women, like in this whole Black girl magic, and in Asian women, like people don't want to be held back. Sorry, women specifically don't want to be held back by all of these outdated traditions. They can't have careers. They can't do this stuff. So just fight for what you believe in. Don't fight for what you believe in for everything outside of your relationship and who you're going to spend the rest of your life with. Fight for what you believe in, period. And if people aren't willing to jump on the bandwagon and support you, then you may have to lose some people for a period of time. Again, from the conversations that I have with people, a very high percentage of the time, people come back around. They may leave your life for a couple months' time. When a baby comes into play, or when they figure out that they actually miss your company, they will be back in your life, and they will be back there to support you. So stop fearing that it's going to be so bad and they're going to excommunicate you and you'll never be able to talk to anybody again. Just fight for what you believe in, just like you would do for anything else.
Yes to all of that. I think it's like fight for what you believe in, but like be who you want to be. I think it's just like be true to yourself. And a thing that comes out of that is being true to who you want to be with. I think a lot of the times South Asian women in particular, like we try to fit all these different molds, whether that's careers or what we wear or how we carry ourselves and who we fall in love with. And I think it's just be true to yourself. As long as you're doing that, yeah, you may lose some friends, some family along the way, but at least you won't lose yourself.
Yeah.
And a byproduct of that is like being with the person that you love. Like that's beautiful.
Mm.
I'm a hopeless romantic. I love love. So I'm like, where, you know, you're gonna find it wherever you're gonna find it, and embrace that.
You're doing nothing wrong. Gosh, that's the
literally nothing wrong.
So we could, as we just said, talk about this discussion all day long, and there's so much that we probably haven't touched on, but it was so good. And thank you, Jonah, again for joining us for this discussion. And everyone should go and follow just at BlindianProject.
Yeah, that's it.
It's amazing. So everyone should go follow it now.
Thank you.
And if you want to hear more from the rest of us, you can find Mal at _MALSHK. And you can find Alina at Alina Iman, and me, Brown Girl Kim. And of course, keep following Asian Women Festival for more updates and more positive stories and more positive conversations. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.